Soul Simmers, welcome to the Builders Bootcamp, your ultimate training ground for learning how to build in The Sims. Whether you're a beginner or someone who's looking to level up their skills, this series will take you from the beginner tips to the pro level builds. This is the 2025 updated edition of the series that I did in 2022, since we've had quite a couple of build updates in The Sims, and it will cover everything that you need to know to create your dream builds in the game. So grab your blueprints and let's get to building. In this episode of the Builders Bootcamp, we are going to cover the camera modes. The camera modes are very important throughout the rest of building because you are going to use them a lot. I wouldn't say you're going to switch a lot between them, but it's important to know the difference. I'm going to refer back to being on a specific camera mode to be able to do certain things in the game. So I thought we're actually going to start with getting that out of the way first. I think you're going to have a lot of benefit from understanding these. So like I've shown in the previous episode, but just in case you did not see that one, this is where you can find the camera controls. They're in your top right corner. There's a little camera icon. This is where you can zoom in and zoom out. This is where you can rotate, although again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you use your slider and these two buttons to rotate or zoom. You can zoom in and out with your scroll wheel, and you can use your comma and period key on your keyboard to actually rotate your camera. I recommend that you use those controls over the controls up here because it's just not convenient. But then when it comes to the camera modes, there are 3 camera modes that I would like to explain today. And actually there's technically a 4th one, but it's very straightforward. If you click on this, you go onto the top view. This can sometimes be really easy to just get a quick overview of your build and the things that you're doing. If you click on it again, it will take you back to the angled view. There's also a keyboard shortcut for this, which is the T button on your keyboard. I like to use this when building to quickly check how something looks space-wise. Also, if you're interested in learning more about keyboard shortcuts and you didn't hear it in my previous video, I do actually have a full video on keyboard shortcuts, including a free cheat sheet that you can download. I'll make sure to link that in this video as well because it is pretty useful, but feel free to check that out if you're interested to learn more. But now back to the 3 camera modes that are important to know. So in The Sims, we have the Sims 4 camera, the free camera, and the Sims 3 camera. I think the most important thing that you need to know is that the free camera you will probably not use when building. You will probably use it when checking out your builds and seeing your final product and seeing if something looks good in first person mode, but you're probably never going to be on this camera when you're actually building or playing the game for that matter. This is just a fun, cheeky camera to get into your first person perspective with your Sims. If you click this, as you can see, the entire game UI changes. You can now still see my mouse, but if you click it, you can actually rotate freely. This is great for getting a lay of the land and the world that you are. And if you are in this camera mode, you actually use the WASD and the Q and the E key to control your camera. For anyone who's playing other games in The Sims, this is probably going to feel very familiar because you go forward with your W key, you go back with your S key, you go right with your D key, and you go left with your A key. With your E key, you go up, and with your Q key, you go down. This allows you for more precise camera control. It allows you for kind of like going on that eye level with your Sims. This is great for screenshots. This is really fun for taking good pictures of inside your build. This is going to be very nice if you're a person who wants to primarily build and take good pictures of your builds, or if you're a person who likes to do like very elaborate storytelling through screenshots in gameplay mode. This is not a camera mode that I would ever consider playing the game on. However, it is technically possible to play the game on this camera mode. So if you're actually in gameplay mode and not in build mode, you can access this view by clicking tab on your keyboard. You can actually press shift tab to get into first person modes to actually play the game. So if you just press tab, this is basically your free camera just for you. If you actually want to go full on first person view for your sim, you press shift tab on your keyboard, and that will take you into a game mode where you can play the game first person. Sims is not really made for it, but it's very fun to do for shits and giggles, so please have a go at it. I can specifically recommend doing this if your sim is taking a jog through the neighborhood because it's a fun way to see your Sim's world from your Sim's perspective. However, for building, this is specifically nice to take screenshots and stuff, and I definitely use this a lot when I'm building and I want to get to eye level to see if a room looks good, if things are clipping, stuff like that. Now that we've covered that camera mode, let's go to the distinction between the Sims 4 and the Sims 3 camera, because that is also going to be important when you're actually building, because the game allows you to do different things based on which camera mode you're on. So if you're on the Sims 4 camera, which is the one that I'm on right now, there is a couple of things that you can do. You can actually click and drag. So you can just click somewhere with your mouse and then drag to go around. I like to click and drag, but this is something that you cannot do on the Sims 3 camera, or at least not with your left mouse button. There's no custom angles. So you can rotate and you can drag, but you cannot like change the angle of which you're viewing the lot. This is the angle that you get, and that's it. You can zoom, of course, so you can can do that on all camera modes, but that's it. This is basically the Sims 4 camera explained. There is a lot of things like custom placing furniture and things that you cannot do on the Sims 4 camera. The Sims 4 camera is very basic, very bare bones. It's very straightforward. It does what it needs to do, basically allowing you to simply control the game. But I think that any Sims player will recommend you to play on the Sims 3 camera. I personally switch between the two, but I think I'm an exception to the rule of thumb of just playing on the Sims 3 camera. So let's actually go into that one. So as soon as you switch to the Sims 3 camera, as you can see, I'm clicking. I can no longer click and drag. You can actually hold your right mouse button and kind of hover like this to navigate around, which for me personally doesn't feel very intuitive, but it is an option. You can use it if you want. If you don't want to use that, you can actually use the arrow keys or the WASD keys on your keyboard to navigate around if that feels more comfortable. If you are on the Sims 3 camera, you can actually use custom angles. You're gonna have to click your scroll wheel for this, and then as you can see, I can change the angle to which I'm looking at the build, and I can also rotate simultaneously. This is something that I think takes a little bit of time to get used to. I also, on my previous Builders Bootcamp, had a lot of questions for people asking how to do this on a trackpad. On a trackpad, I used to play on a MacBook. I would scroll with basically putting 2 fingers down and then scrolling on the trackpad. You're gonna have to do that here as well, where you're basically gonna place 2 fingers and then you're gonna like try to adjust this build angle. I think personally the reason I never used the Sims 3 camera is because I played on a MacBook primarily in the beginning of this game, which meant that I didn't really have great access to these controls. So if you want to use the Sims 3 camera, I can just recommend you get a mouse. It is technically possible on a trackpad, but it doesn't work very intuitively. It doesn't work very smoothly. So just get yourself like a cheap $10 mouse somewhere that you can just hook up to your laptop whenever you play The Sims so that you can use the Sims 3 camera. Then, like I said, there are certain little things where you need the Sims 3 camera for. If you have this item, you can actually, as you can see, you can rotate it on like a 45-degree angle. However, if you want to free rotate this item to like have it slightly adjusted, you cannot do that on the Sims 4 camera. If you're on the Sims 4 camera, you can rotate it with your period and your comma key on your keyboard. Again, only at that 45-degree angle, but that's everything you're gonna get. If you're on the Sims 3 camera, you can use that by clicking your left mouse button and then rotating. But as you can see there, this is the rotation you have. However, if you're on the Sims 3 camera and you hold Alt, you can like rotate slightly and slowly. So you need to click Alt on your keyboard and then your left mouse button, and then you can actually rotate it. This is important because, like I said, this is not an option on the Sims 4 camera, and this is gonna come in super clutch as soon as we start decorating our houses, because this is gonna make it so much easier to clutter in like a natural fashion. And then lastly, there is a quote-unquote hidden camera mode, which is called the cinematic camera. And I am going to cover it here simply because sometimes people set it up by accident and they don't know how to reset it anymore. And sometimes it can be really confusing if you didn't realize you set this up and then you try to play the game and your camera just starts flying all over the place. So you know how we can go into that free camera mode and we can like navigate to a nice view of our house, like of our build that we've done? If you actually want to save this camera position, let's say this is the position that you always take your screenshots, you can actually press Control and then any number on your keyboard from 5 to 0. So if you hold Control and you press 5, and then let's say we're actually going to go to a second camera position, I'm going to show you what is going on. So I just pressed Control 5 on my keyboard. And let's say that now I want to have a screenshot from this angle and I press Control. Let's do Control 6. Now, if I press 5, it will go back to that previous camera view. And if I press 6, it will go back to this camera view. However, what happens is if you're playing the game and you now press 5, it will actually try to like go back to that camera view, even though you're not actually in the first person camera mode. If you go into the tab view and you then do it, it will nicely move to that perspective. Apparently this is what happens. I clicked 7. I guess I had a preset at 7. This is what happens. My camera starts flying around. And sometimes people don't realize that they've set this up. And the reason that I'm saying this is because you can technically set up a camera point. Let's set up like a ridiculous camera point somewhere here in the back. You accidentally press Control 9. This is your camera. There you go. As soon as you're building, there is a little shortcut that allows you to lower and raise items. We're gonna get to that later in the decoration video, so don't worry, you don't have to remember this information. But if you have a plant, but you actually want it to be higher up, you can press 9 on your keyboard to raise up that item. However, we now have a camera preset programmed to 9. So what happens is if I press this, my camera will start flying. And then people are like, wait, why does that not work? Let me go back. Let me zoom in. I'm getting ready. Okay, let's go. I'm gonna raise this item. I press 9 and the camera starts flying. This is a really annoying thing, and I feel like a lot of people don't cover this in their Sims camera videos because a lot of people don't know that the cinematic camera exists, even though having it is pretty cool if you want to do like nice screenshots or you're trying to do build videos for your Sims. Being able to navigate this smoothly between perspectives is a pretty cool feature. If you want to get back to a place where that 9 key is no longer tied to that weird camera position, you have to press Alt 9. So now that I've pressed Alt 9 on my keyboard, I can actually grab this plant and I can start using the 9 key to lower and raise items again. This means that if you have a weird setup of your camera flying around, this could potentially be why. There is another reason your camera sometimes jumps up and down when you're building. I have a whole separate video on how to fix that. It does include you going into the game files and stuff, so I wouldn't recommend watching that if you are a beginner builder because it's not going to be the most relevant. But if you spend a lot of hours in build mode and you're annoyed with the camera jumping up and down, I'll make sure to link a separate tutorial on how to fix that in the description box down below. And that was the second episode of the Builders Bootcamp covering camera modes. If you have any additional questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. If this video was helpful and taught you something new, please toss it a cheeky like. And if you're not subscribed to my channel yet, feel free to check it out. I make videos about everything and anything The Sims 4. And if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. And with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone!